Hello, everyone. Chris Whitten, glad to be back with you today. I want to start out by thanking everybody for the comments and such. I got was asking people, just what you wanted to hear. I know I had one comment asking me to continue on with my history of the Texas Red Dirt music scene, which I do plan on getting back to that and finishing out that series soon. Sorry, I kind of got a little sidetracked here and there. Just keeping abreast of current events, people that have passed away, and things like that, anniversaries of certain things. Anyway, I will get back on track with that. I haven't forgotten about it, but I've have some other stuff going on, several irons in the fire, and I'm looking to do some interviews with some musicians and artists about some different subjects and different people, different artists that have passed away. Before we go any further, though, I would like to ask, if you haven't yet, please go down below, subscribe to the channel, like the video. If you click that little bell icon, anytime I upload new content, you will receive a notification so you know when there is a new video out, and so you can race right over and watch it and click that little like button again. It helps me make more videos like this and help keep me on track and kind of give me an idea of whether or not I'm doing a good job. So about today's story, I recently had someone ask me what really the craziest thing I could think of that I ever encountered on the road, just something entirely unexpected, crazy, dangerous, unbelievable experience. And the story had come to mind, and it had been kind of on the back of my mind for a week or so. And I was already considering doing it, sharing it for today's video. And it just so happened I got up this morning, I opened Facebook, looked at my memories, and saw where I posted advertising for this particular show this day in 2011. So I thought, well, that's a little fortuitous. Actually was talking about this just a few days ago, thinking about making a video about it, and then I see that this is actually the 14th anniversary of when it occurred. So I wanted to go ahead and share this little story. And y'all can take this as a kind of an entertaining and cautionary tale. I always tell people, man, keep your head on a swivel, pay attention. You never know what kind of situation you might find yourself in, good or bad. And I think this is a very good illustration of that. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So in 2011, I was actually living in Houston. I had a real good friend who he has a business. He actually started an energy drink company called Red Dirt Hurricane. I talked a little bit about them before when I was talking about the early days with Cody Johnson. That's where we all first met Lee Wayne and Scott and the guy and Moki and the guys over at Red Dirt Hurricane, and did quite a few shows for him with Cody. So I'd continued working with those guys, and they signed a young band. We were working on trying to put together like a, not necessarily a record label. We were just trying to put something together where independent artists would have a better opportunity and better means to distribute their music. And we actually tried to hammer out a deal with Universal Fontana Music Group out of Los Angeles. Didn't really work out the way we wanted. But at any rate, that's a whole separate story in and of itself. But I say all that to say this: one of the bands that Lee Wayne and the guys decided to work with was a group of young musicians out of Fairfield, Texas, which is about halfway between Dallas and Houston, which is about a 4-hour drive total from Dallas to Houston, for those of you who are not familiar with the area. And Fairfield is a reasonably small town. So these guys, at the time, I was around 30 years old, and I was about 10 years older than these guys. They were all just, 20, 21 years old. So I was trying to help my friends with the energy drink business get a record finished for these guys. We were going to do like a 3-song EP for starters. And the company was funding that. It was a whole thing involved with it. We had a producer in a studio, and things kind of went sideways after one day of tracking. Long story short, I ended up moving the project over to my friend Stormy Cooper's studio, Stormy Cooper Media. They're in Houston. It's a great studio. and he did us a great deal on some time to go ahead and get that record finished and tighten everything up and cleaned up. So it kind of fell backwards in my lap to be kind of a de facto producer on this deal. And so I lined up all the musicians, got everybody in there, and we were working on all this stuff at this time. At the same time, was working with George Strait's Ace and the Whole Band, and we weren't playing a whole lot. So I had free time, and I would book, gigs with other artists and just kind of be a hired gun in between that when we were off. So I was doing that, going out playing some gigs here and there with this young band from Fairfield, and just trying to help them put together a stage show and just help them along a little bit when and where I could, and kind of teach them the ropes and everything. Kind of, I guess you could say, artist development, you might call it. But anyway, we had a show one night up in Mahia, Texas, which is actually about 45 minutes west of Fairfield. If you leave Fairfield and head due west, you pretty much will run into Waco. And about 45 minutes, like I said, from Fairfield, you pass through the town of Mahia, which is actually spelled Mexia. Some of y'all might be familiar with Mahia. That's where the model Anna Nicole Smith was originally from. It's also where the great Western swing songwriter hailed from, a lady by the name of Cindy Walker, which I had the opportunity to meet Cindy before she passed away and actually attended her funeral there in Mahia. Anyway, there's a club there called the Cowboy and Western Club that's been there, I don't know, probably at least since the 1950s, probably before that. I'm not real sure. The place is kind of legendary, just one of those old haunts on the circuit, that everybody played over the years. So I was going to play a gig with these guys up there, and when we showed up for sound check, the bass player and drummer were brothers, and they both worked for an oil field company out of Fairfield. And the bass player had a guy with him who had recently gone to work with him about 2 weeks before that, and they had just met, known each other about 2 weeks. So this gentleman decided to ride to the gig with the bass player, a fellow by the name of David, and just hang out for the evening. So he was there at sound check, like I said, and I pretty much right off the bat was a little leery of the guy. I could tell from talking to him. I was pretty sure that he was probably using steroids and possibly some kind of speed. I've seen enough of it down through the years to be able to recognize the signs, I guess. But I was just a little bit nervous around him. I didn't fully trust the fella. I mean, he was plenty friendly and everything. I could just, I could tell. It seemed to me like he could turn on you and possibly get violent pretty quickly. And like I said, I've seen it happen. So I was, just kind of keeping him at arm's length as being friendly, but, I didn't entirely trust the guy. So as the evening wore on, everybody was having a good time. And like I said, these guys were young. They were new to it. They were having a blast, just enjoying life, enjoying playing music. And so we were going to play this gig that night. And most of the band actually lived back in Huntsville, which is a little ways north of Houston there, about halfway between Fairfield and Houston proper. And the next morning, we were going to go back to Huntsville, spend the night, and then next morning go on over to Stormy's studio because we had a session to do that day to try to finish out that EP that I was talking about. So we had a pretty busy day going for us the next day. Obviously, we were going to be out late playing that gig that night. So, we were just kind of trying to be professional, go get the gig over with, go get some rest so we would be up to recording the next day. Unfortunately, it did not work out like that. So as I was saying, everybody was having a good time. And in the course of the gig, and especially after the gig, after we got done playing, it became very obvious that the bass player was in no shape to drive. He had drank quite a bit, and his alter ego had come out, and no joke, this guy literally turned into Captain Jack Sparrow after a certain number of drinks, and it was really quite comical, honestly. But anyhow, before the show, when we were changing clothes in the green room, getting ready to go on stage, I noticed that he had laid his truck keys down on the table while he was changing clothes, and I didn't see him again after that. This fellow that had ridden with him was standing there as well. So after the show, it was quite obvious that David was not in any shape to drive himself home. And then on top of that, he could not find his truck keys. So we spent the better part of half an hour looking, searching high and low. And in the meantime, the fellow that had ridden with him had vanished. We didn't know where he had gone. So we're looking all over for his keys. We finally give up on it and said, you know what, we've got to get some rest. We got to get back to Huntsville. We have a session tomorrow. So let's go ahead and I told David, said, you just come with us. We'll go to Huntsville, catch some sleep, and then head on to the studio tomorrow. Then after we're finished recording and head back, we'll get you a ride back over here and try to figure out what happened to your key and figure out how to pick your truck up. So we get outside, we all load up in the truck. Like I said, I had ridden with, three of us had ridden together and in one of the other guys' pickup. So we get in the truck and we're getting ready to leave. We pull around the corner of the building, and as we're going to pull out, there was a vehicle sitting directly in front of us, lights on, facing us, and we could not get around them. So we sat there for a long minute. We thought, okay, somebody's saying their goodbyes and getting dropped off at their vehicle, something like that. The vehicle never moved, so we sat there for a few minutes and felt like, well, we got to get out of here. So one of the guys got out of the car, out of the truck, and walked up there, and we were maybe 20 feet away from him, and we had the windows down so we could hear the conversation, and he very politely asked, there were two females sitting in the front seat of this vehicle. It was an SUV, as I recall, and he politely asked them if they could move out of the way because we needed to get on down the road, try to get some sleep. The girl was pretty abusive with her language and just basically proceeded to tell him where he could go and what he could do and that she wasn't going anywhere, that we could go around her. Well, yet again, he implored her to move, and to no avail. She just cussed at him some more, and it went on like this. He asked her very politely 4 or 5 times. He's like, look, we really need to go. And he finally lost his patience, and he said, look, move this vehicle out of the way. He started getting, kind of forceful with her. And he was still not being rude. He still didn't cuss at her. He was still very polite. But, he was at a point that he was losing his patience. Well, when he got a little firm with her and told her, look, you move this vehicle out of our way now, we didn't realize that our bass player, David's friend that had ridden with him, was actually sitting in the back seat of this vehicle. He flipped out. He started yelling, don't you talk to her that way. And he jumped out of the vehicle, the back passenger door. And of course, from our perspective, we just see that back passenger door fly open and him jump out. The guy that was Mike, who was talking to the lady in the window, he come around the front of the truck to talk to him. And it was very obvious to us from 20 feet away, watching him in the headlights and watching the body language, that this guy meant business and he had every intention of taking a swing at Mike. But Mike was cool as a cucumber, and as they come around the truck and they come face to face in the front of that SUV, the guy reared back to swing, and quite honestly, I have rarely seen anybody take a punch like Mike did in that moment. He actually kind of rolled with it and come back, so it was really kind of a glancing blow. It didn't have too much of an effect, but at that point the fight was on. So me and the other guy that were in the truck, we both jumped out of the truck. He started running that way. And I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm not going to go get myself in a fist fight with somebody who's on steroids, drunk, and probably either on cocaine or has used methamphetamine or something like that. I'm just not going to do it. So, seeing where this was going rather quickly, when we stepped out of the truck, I just looked in the back of the truck. I was looking for something to just knock him out with so we could load up and leave. That was how I was going to handle it. I just be honest. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that was my way of handling it. So I looked over in the back of the truck and saw a tire tool. I just grabbed it and I started around the truck. Well, by this time, the other guy had gotten out, ran up there, tried to break up the fight. The guy went to take a swing at him. In the meantime, the girl who was in the driver's seat had gotten out of the vehicle. She ran around the front of the vehicle, and just as the other guy, Jonesy, who was in the vehicle, had run up and drew back to take a swing because this guy was about to hit him and he was trying to get him off of him, this girl stepped in between them and she got hit. It's completely an accident, and he wouldn't have hit a female on purpose anyway. Well, of course, at that point, she just saw fire, I think, and she was out for blood. Obviously, she was drunk as well. And at that point, she just started trying to beat on everybody. So the fight was going between the three guys, and she was just throwing punches in the middle of it. I run around the vehicle. By the time I get around at the front of the truck, this just kind of a rolling fight had come back, and they were all on the driver's side of the pickup. So I run around the truck, and as I do, the two guys that I was with broke free. And meanwhile, David, the bass player, is still in the back seat. And like I said, he at that point was in his alter ego of Captain Jack Sparrow. So he actually opened the door and stepped out. And he was just kind of tiptoeing through the middle of this fight, dodging punches, going, "Come on, guys, can't we all just be friends?" And it was very comical. It was a very serious situation, but it was just so surreal and so comical. And in the course of all this fight carried on for close to 5 minutes. And in the course of that, I could never get a clear shot on this guy. Every time I got close to it, was trying to pull him apart. It was just a disaster. And at various times, I found myself back in the truck thinking that it was done and we were going to leave, at least 3 times, and each time with 3 different people. And at one point, I was in the truck with one of the guy who owned the truck, as well as the buddy who was obviously inebriated, who started the altercation, in the back seat. And he proceeded to begin apologizing to us for starting a fight. And we're like, "That's great, fine, wonderful, get out, we got to go." So long story short, we finally get him out of the vehicle. We get everybody loaded up. We pull out. We get on the road. And we're like, wow, that was intense. So we went on back to Huntsville, went to bed. And about 6 o'clock that morning, one of the guys got a phone call, and they came and woke me up and told me what was going on. Shortly after this all occurred, David's truck was actually found on the side of I-35 in Fairfield, about a quarter-mile north of the Love's truck stop, pulled into a gate leading into a pasture. Somebody had parked it there, left the doors open, poured a can of gas in the interior of it, and lit it on fire and burned it to the ground. So, of course, law enforcement arrived. They pulled his tag number, got a contact. They were trying to reach him. They ended up calling his mom and dad, who was a preacher there in town, and waking them up in the middle of the night, saying, "Look, we found your son's truck burned to the ground. There's no sign of him. Do you know where he's at?" Of course, they panicked. In the meantime, David's phone had died. He didn't have his phone charger with him, so they couldn't get a hold of him. Eventually, they called the brother, who was the drummer. He'd already gone home, didn't know any of this had transpired, and he called one of the other guys to find out if David was with us and okay, and just let us know what had happened. So, and in the course of the fight, this was probably one of the worst parts, is the guy who was driving the truck was the lead singer and lead guitar player. Well, unfortunately, when he jumped out of the truck and ran up to break the fight up, and the guy started swinging at him, and he hit the guy, he actually broke his left hand. And as I said, we had a session the next day, and we needed to track some guitars. And so it was a bad situation. His hand started swelling up immediately. They woke me up, told me what was going on. I said, "Well, it is what it is. We can't do anything about it right now. Let's get some rest, and we'll start again tomorrow." So that's what we did. The next morning, we got up, we went to the studio, which the session was pretty much an entirely wasted day. All we accomplished was getting some overdubs done with some vocals, and I overdubbed some fiddle, and that was about it. Of course, the bass player, he was terribly hungover that next day, and wasn't really in any kind of shape to be trying to play on any record. So, but as it turned out, we called the guy who owned the club, and a very nice fellow, and visited with him at length. I talked to him to try to find out, piece together what had occurred. And according to him, after we had pulled out of the parking lot that night, of course, some of his employees were carrying trash out when the fight occurred, and they saw that, went back inside the club and told him what was going on. Well, we pulled out of the parking lot. The buddy, the one who started the fight, he wandered back in the club, and he couldn't find his phone either. So he asked the club owner if he could borrow a phone and try to contact somebody. Actually, he asked him for a ride first, and the club owner said, "Look, man, I live like a mile down the road. I've had a couple of drinks, and I don't feel like driving 45 minutes all the way into Fairfield. I don't want to get stopped. I don't think it's safe. I'll be more than happy to help you call someone." So apparently, they attempted to call the guy's aunt, I believe it was. I can't remember now whether he got him on the phone or not. But in the course of all that, he said that the guy stuck his hand in his pocket and kind of had an odd reaction, and then said, "You know what, never mind." Hung the phone up, handed it back to the owner, and told him, "Have a good night," turned around and walked out the door. Well, he said a short time later, he was leaving and locking up himself, and as he locked up and walked out the back door, he heard a truck engine rev, and he stepped around the corner and saw David's truck, of course, unaware of who was driving it. He saw the truck peel out of the parking lot, throwing gravel out on the road. Well, this guy, during sound check earlier in the day, just in talking to him, had told several stories about getting drunk and wrecking motorcycles at over 100 miles an hour, and basically said he was lucky to still be alive, which I had to agree with him. Some of the stories that he was telling, and he was a pretty wild fella. But that 45-minute drive back to Fairfield, apparently he made it back in about 20 minutes. So to give you an idea of how he was driving that truck, when he got back, apparently he parked it there, lit it on fire, and walked away. He lived less than 2 miles away. I was within walking distance. So, pretty good walk, but still walkable. So anyway, that was what transpired. And, of course, we had to talk to the insurance investigators and law enforcement and everybody else to try to piece together what had happened. The deal was, when it came right down to it, they could not prove that he was the one who stole the truck and set it on fire. They did find his fingerprints in the truck, and there were some items that had been in the seat of the truck that had been thrown out on the ground at the time the truck was set on fire. And of course, they fingerprinted all of that, and of course, the guy's prints came back on the stuff. But he just made the argument. Look, I rode out there to the club with him earlier that day, so I was in the truck with his permission. Of course, my fingerprints were in there. So, long story short, they were never able to prove anything. The guy was never charged with anything, and Carino, thankfully, his full coverage replaced his pickup. But anyhow, I think that was among the craziest things that I can think of that happened on a gig. And like I said, it had far-reaching ramifications. Obviously, Jonesy his hand had to heal. It was an issue with booking gigs. It slowed us down on getting the album finished. It was quite an experience, to say the least. And there's several other gigs I played with them. We had some crazy stuff happen. One night, a guy was in a side-by-side that flipped over and got his leg nearly torn off and had to be life flighted. There's a couple of instances like that. I joked with them and told those guys, I said, "Man, I think y'all are just bad luck, man. I don't know if I can go out and play any more gigs with you fellas." So, but anyhow, I just wanted to share that. And you never know what kind of situation you're going to find yourself in. And always trust your gut, because like I said, I had a bad feeling about that situation and about that fella from the moment they walked into sound check, and unfortunately, my feeling proved to be correct, and so that's how it all ended up. But I just wanted to share that with y'all. I thought you might get a kick out of that little story, and you just never know. Being a musician can be awful dangerous at times, between all the traveling and crazy drunk people and people on drugs and all sorts of stuff. You encounter all types, but it was definitely a learning experience that night. I'd like to thank everybody for all the likes, subscribe, comment, shares, all that sort of stuff. Please keep it up, and I appreciate it so much. Also, if you need some violin or fiddle tracks or mandolin tracks recorded, let me know. I'd love the opportunity to work with you and see what we can come up with, and we can track some instruments for you. Also, if you're interested in violin or fiddle lessons, please let me know. I would be more than happy to do that with you. We can do it remotely, work around your schedule, and make it real simple. So until next time, I hope everyone has a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and keep on picking.